this session, we're going to be talking about corporate America. We have here with me on the podium, I have Mr. Thomas Ndomb, who works with Telco 214. His role there, he's performing as a VP of Career Relations. And we have Mr. Fofeyin Bonito, who's now the president of CPS, as you all know. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And he's at Rent a Center, and his role there involves being the merchandise planning. So myself, I work with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I work in assurance services in the healthcare space. Biotech and pharma type clients are those that I tend to focus on. And so I probably just start by having maybe Mr. Thomas, you can go first and just give us some insight on your take on corporate America. You've been obviously seasoned in your role, what you do there, and how maybe you got in and what that experience has been, so some of the members in our audience can benefit from that.
Anyway, thank you very much for being here. It's really hard for me to speak about success because I am actually a child of failure. You know, I wasn't very successful. I'm sure by the time you saw my name there, you were expecting to have, I mean, one of those guys that they plaster in the newspaper with all the degrees in the world and everything. I am more of a child of experience than anything. And of course, experience comes from failure. And my rise to corporate America actually started from Cameroon. And Cameroon by the way of Nigeria, and then from there to Africa, and then, from there to West Africa, and then Africa in general before I landed here. So I have a different, I mean, my journey is very long. I cannot really summarize it in a few points, but I will try.
Okay, and then maybe Mr. Bonito.
Yeah, my own approach would be the contrary one to Thomas. After high school, I came here, went to school, and after undergraduate, and decided to look for a job like everybody. Now, this was in 2004, so I wasn't really looking for a job in corporate America. After graduation, I was just looking to pay that next bill. And so I went around the day after graduation, I saw somebody advertising at a local store in a small town in Arkansas for an account manager position. So I say, well, I mean, hey, I have a business degree, I can at least do an account manager job. And I went there, and the guys, they hired me on the spot. They said, start right away. So I didn't even go home to change. So, but I realized I entered the company at the very lowest level. And after that, it was just understanding the company, working my way up from the retail locations all the way to the corporate office. So that is the route I took. So started at the very lowest level of the company and worked my way up until I was promoted to the corporate office where I am today.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing those insights. I think for most of us, once we come from Cameroon, for instance, there's a dream, obviously, which we have. One of the reasons why we came here, or why we come here, and as we look on seeing those who are successful, maybe folks in the media, at some point it seems like a very challenging or impossible place to get to, and so I imagine that there's probably been some challenges you guys have faced along the way as you got on there, and maybe certain systems that you've developed that you might recommend as a template, if you will, for perhaps some of our guests in the audience and those who are watching or who get to watch us after this, that they may be able to use to map out their own course to success. So perhaps we could take it from there, and you guys can run with it.
Of course, I mean, my background, I mean, is varied, and like I said, why I said I'm a child of failure, because I went to Ngwakele, I mean the old Ngwakele, not the system that we have in place today with thousands of universities, you know. It was a unique university. Everybody had to go there after A-levels. And of course, if you went there and after 2 years you didn't succeed, then you have to be sent back home. And I went there after my A-levels, read economics, and after 2 years, they told me, hey, you don't qualify, get out of the system. I went out of the system, lost my scholarship, then went from economics, I went to history and geography. When I went to history and geography, I was like, what am I really doing here? I'm learning about cartography, and climatology, rural geography, and everything. But I learned stuff from each of those. I can tell you today that, for example, I had a lecture which was very boring, rural geography. It was a Professor Kongwa, who today teaches at the University of Boya. And by the way, I'm from a French background in Cameroon, so you understand how I step into this world. And those were the few lectures at the university. Actually, the Department of History and Geography at the University of Yaoundé at the time was the most bilingual of all the departments of the university. So I was taught by Ngo, the history of Cameroon. I was taught about the history of the American diaspora, things that I didn't really know could apply to me in the future. But I went through that process, did not like it. I wasn't really very effective at it, failed again. So this is me getting out of the system after 4 years at Nguakele, failing systematically, and I'm sent back home. What do? I went back home, stayed, and started looking at why are the reasons that I failed. Why didn't I manage to succeed in this environment? First, I realized that the kind of training, because I was actually coming from an environment like the one they talked about, a few minutes ago, Sase and Lud. The school that I went to is called Collège Sacré-Cœur de Macaque, which was the equivalent of what Sacred Heart College was in the English-speaking side. And the kind of training that were provided by Canadians wasn't really compatible with the university system, because the first time I sat at the University of Yaoundé in a classroom, everybody started pulling missiles and bullets and people were basically taking their textbooks and writing all the material. I couldn't do that. After 2 years, in brief, I'm out of the system, and I start thinking, what should I do? The next step, we are around the 1990s, I joined politics, started marching, started going through the process of, let's get BR out of here, producing all the red cards in the world, shaking the place, Unity Palace, everywhere. I was everywhere. Everywhere there was a political meeting, I was there. But the first betrayal that I witnessed in my life was the fact that first, we were unable to topple Biya, but at the same time, the people who actually went to negotiate with him were the people who were well-trained coming from the diaspora. So this is a situation where we are the ones marching, but guess who is getting the seat at the dinner table? The guy who is ready with his PhD coming from France and somewhere else. And I'm like, wow, I must be missing something here. Why are we walking when we are not prepared? Even if the change has to happen today, we will not be prepared to take over. So I noticed two trends. First, in order to get a job in Cameroon, you had to be bilingual, because I kind of saw the tip changing from French towards English. Secondly, I noticed you had to be a good professional. So you should have studied something professional in order to be successful. Third, I didn't have enough money. What do? I want to be bilingual. I want to be a professional. What do I do? Where do I go? I don't have the money to go anywhere. So I gathered my little 100,000 CFA, and I'm like, there must be a secret why there is less joblessness in the English-speaking Cameroon. Why there's less joblessness in the English-speaking Cameroon is because they have Nigeria. They can always cross that border and go and train there and come back and, challenge us. So I had to go to Nigeria because that's the escape. And that's where I got my training. Of course, it's very important because I went there, read everything that is about business administration, finance, and then qualified somehow as a certified accountant. When I came back to Cameroon, it didn't take me 5 days to get a job. I went back to Cameroon in '96. That's the time when they were having all these pipeline projects and everything. So there was a high demand for qualified bilingual staff in audit firms in Cameroon. Of course, the pipeline, $6 billion projects, there were so many things that companies wanted to do. It took me 5 days to get a job. I did not need an uncle, I did not need an auntie, I didn't know anybody. I just walked from accounting firm to accounting firm in the city of Douala after mapping all of them. And from Monday to Thursday, I got a call to come and report to work on the next Monday, which was fantastic. They promised to pay me 120,000 francs CFA. They ended up paying me just 20,000. But that was the best entry point possible because I was coming at a time in Cameroon when there was a momentum in the economy. So I'm coming into that momentum, getting a job. I'm not well paid, but I'm at the entry point. 9 months after I get a big break, I end up at the time, Arthur Andersen was the #1 accounting firm in the world. I get into Arthur Andersen Central Africa, and that's where my life completely changed, from failure to something else. So I basically moved from just being a nonsense guy to the guy who knows what to do, and that's where I was taught how to become a corporate guy. Because now I move into auditing Sonel, auditing SNEC. We actually prepare for the privatization of Sonel, prepare for the privatization of SNEC. We audited most of the banks in Cameroon who were into oil in Congo and so on. And that's what prepared me to where I am today. So I took a little bit of time to go through that process so that you understand why I'm sitting here today. And the tips for success actually is just basically from where what I already spoken about, which means first, as a Cameroonian, if you want to make it today in the corporate world, be a professional. I don't have anything, and trust me, I read literature at the beginning in my life, in high school. That's what I did. I don't have anything against people who read literature. But even if you read literature, you have to become a professional at something within the literature environment. In Cameroon today, if you want to get a job, be a professional. If you just have a degree, it's not enough. You need to have a marketable skill. The second point in Cameroon is you need to be bilingual. And by meaning bilingual, I'm not talking about people who can speak English and French perfectly. Being bilingual in the corporate world in Cameroon and I'm speaking especially for the French-speaking people, is to be able to understand the nitty-gritty of the English-speaking culture and the English-speaking market in Cameroon. Some people will sit in Yaoundé and they will make decisions based on the economy, based on the population of Cameroon, thinking that, there are only 2 provinces in Cameroon, so that is the English-speaking people make up 20% of the population of Cameroon, so we don't even need to cater for them. That is the big lie. These are the real numbers. The English speaking people of Cameroon make up, they are about 4 million. 4 million out of the 20 million population. If you add to that the 5 million Nigerians that live in Cameroon, the actual population of English-speaking people in Cameroon is actually 49% of the whole population. So now you understand why MTN as a mobile company is the most successful mobile company in Cameroon. Not because they do better than Orange, but it's because they are tapping better into the English-speaking market in Cameroon. So that is why, as a Cameroonian, you need to be bilingual, not in language terms. You need to be bilingual in terms of knowing what Kumba is, what Fiango market is, in terms of knowing what Boya is, in terms of knowing how to eat fufu and ero in the corner street of Manfe. It's true, because that is one key element that is missing. And in Cameroon also, you cannot do anything in Cameroon. I don't care if you want to produce bananas, you want to produce anything in Cameroon. You cannot create value without thinking about the Nigerian market. It is not possible. It's either they're going to compete against you or you're going to have them as customers. So everything that you do in Cameroon has to factor the Nigerian issue. Whether you are dealing with economic and monetary policy, whether you are dealing with government, but most importantly, when you are dealing with the private sector, you have to factor in Nigeria. And when you look at the profile of the corporate people that are successful today in Cameroon, who is the CEO of MTN today? Is Carl Toriola. Carl Toriola is a Nigerian. If you go to Guinness, the CEO is a Nigerian. If you go to UBA, the guy is there, but before him, he was a Nigerian. I cannot even count the number of companies today in Cameroon that have a Nigerian at their head. Why? Because the Nigerians who are in Lagos make decisions based on the 5 million people, 5 million Nigerians that live in Cameroon. But we in Cameroon act and ignore them completely. And it's not right. Another thing that you could go to is recently, I think 4 months ago or 6 months ago, for the first time in history, an English-speaking Cameroonian was appointed chief accountant of the Brasserie du Cameroon. Why? Because the Brasserie du Cameroon finally understood that English-speaking people also drink beer. Which is true. I mean, if English-speaking people drink beer, it means that the Nigerians that are in Cameroon don't just go to church. They also drink beer on Saturday before they go to church on Sunday. So there are a lot of things like that that you have to be able to understand and for which you have to prepare for in Cameroon if you want to get into the corporate sector. Because in the evolution of the corporate sector in Cameroon today, if you want to go far, prepare yourself globally. You have to work locally in Cameroon, but you have to prepare yourself globally. Cameroon is such a small market that it cannot take all of us. If you want to grow today in Cameroon, prepare yourself to face the global competition. Don't prepare yourself to face the guy in Yaoundé. The guy in Yaoundé doesn't matter at all. He doesn't even factor in. Prepare yourself to face Angola. Prepare yourself to face the market in DRC Congo. Prepare yourself to face the market in Nigeria. Those are the markets that put pressure on Cameroon. It's not Equatorial Guinea, it's not Gabon, it's not all those Congo that we talk about. When somebody throw away 2 Cameroonians, why are they throwing our brothers? Who cares about Equatorial Guinea when there's Nigeria here? You know? So those are the things that you have to prepare for and against. And that's just the beginning. I can go on and on.
I'm going to pivot from the Cameroon focus to the US focus. And some of the points I'm going to make is just piggybacking on what Thomas said. The emphasis on being a professional is one of the things that matters in corporate America. Yes, because you can find your way into the door in several ways. But what you would find out on day one is that the people you're working with, your bosses, are really astute professionals. They know what they're talking about. They know their jobs. So at times, I attended, the first time I got to our corporate office, I attended a meeting with our president. Yes, it was one of those people that grew through the business. But his presentation during that meeting, I mean, he was computing mathematical formulas on the fly. I mean, I was just fresh from school and I couldn't do that. But when you realize that, what do? You must take steps to bring yourself up to par. And for us, we're speaking with a foreign language accent, you must always exceed your peers. So if it means you have to go back to school, you must always be having an opportunity for refreshing your education. You cannot be dormant. You cannot assume you're on the same spot like your peers. So if your peers are at this level, you always have to be a little bit above of them. That has been my experience. Another thing from our culture is a culture of hard work. So now we say you've worked hard, you've succeeded to penetrate the system, and then you just give it your all. You work hard. That works to a certain extent. Yes, you would be recognized for that work. But at a certain level, you find you meet that ceiling where you cannot penetrate beyond. So at a certain level, it becomes a human interaction. What is your interaction with your peers, with your boss, within your industry? So, I mean, some of us, we came and with our culture without the emphasis on networking and talking to other people that have gone before, we realize these problems only after. What do you do about that? You face the problems. One approach that I used after I faced such a problem was using my network, starting with LinkedIn, for example. So I went into LinkedIn within my industry. All right, within 5 years, my goal is, what do I want to be? Do I want to be at the vice president level? Do I want to be a president of the company? Then I looked at the people within my industry that hold those positions at that point in time. And then I tried to map their careers from where I am today to where they are today. What steps did they take? What career positions did they take? How long did they spend on each position? And once I did that, then I benchmarked the position. So within this position, an analyst position, I should be here within this number of years. After this position, this should be my next goal, and this should be my next goal. And once I had all that information, for my next review, I got in there and I laid it down on the table. All right, this is where I am today. These are my competencies. I'm doing my job. This is where the position I want to follow. And once that benchmark was coming of recent, I reminded my colleagues that this is where it is. I'm already exceeding the average, and this is where I have to be. Because at certain times, you find yourself, you have to ask for it. You have to ask for it. And if you are doing all the things that we do, the hard work and everything, and doing our job, and being professionals, and being on top of our game, it means you're needed. And once you bring that conversation, they take it seriously because you are valuable to that company. Another thing is also networking beyond your comfort zones. So if you look within every metro area, for example, you would find a community of your peers in your area of expertise. If you're a software engineer, there is going to be some kind of an association where people of that profession meet after hours, happy hours, and talk about substance. You have to build networks within that industry. The person you can take the phone and call to, hey, I'm experiencing such a problem in my work. How do I go about it? I need to know what is happening in your company. You need to have all those things in place. And once you get that, you should be able to hold yourselves to those benchmarks. If this position is 3 years and you are at the 4th year, the 5th year, then there's a problem. And now within our culture, we will not ask or say anything about it. But what I've learned, from failure, is to start asking about it. All right, this is where I am. This is what is happening around me. I need to be where I need to be. So those are my experiences. In the interest of time, I think, but we have to be on top of your game. If not, you do not rise in the corporate world. You need to know your stuff.
Yeah. So some of the things that I heard you guys say here for you, Mr. Thomas, you indicated being able to spot trends and looking to them and then figuring out how do you align yourself so that you can almost ride the wave and keep with the trend before it even happens. And then the other thing as well, where you noted being able to identify the skill sets that you have, and to your point as well, Mr. Bonito, where you said knowing what you have, you're doing your hard work and all these things, and being able to package that value and advocate for yourself, speaking out. I think that's probably something I would echo as well, based on my experience. I've been at PwC now for 7 years, so some of these points I couldn't agree with you guys more. And then the third thing as well was where you indicated being, I think to your point about being a good performer, but I think some of the things to be careful here as well, some of the things that we do as Cameroonians, and I think as minorities, are that we have certain strengths, but it's important to be able to understand your strengths and identify where it may be necessary to apply balance to your strength. So being a hard worker, for instance, probably gets you to a point where you become addicted to working hard. You don't want to be in that place because then you could lose focus of the bigger picture. So your yield doesn't always have to say be 100%. You have to figure out at what point are you overplaying your strength, okay? Because overplaying your strength can also hurt you, and then it becomes a weakness. So that's, if there's one thing I would note, that'd probably be a key takeaway I might recommend here. But just as we wrap this up, one thing I wanted to note here is I think you noted you studied literature in your back based on your experience. For some of the people in the audience, they're probably thinking, well, maybe I'm not interested in the corporate route, or it's just not for me. But we all have to be professionals because you get to some point where it's beyond the technicals. You got to bring in those soft skills, all these things. So, what are some of the ways? And obviously, being here, I would imagine, is one of those ways. But what are some of the ways that someone who's not on a corporate track might get themselves placed on a professional route so they can bring in both their technical, say someone in engineering or someone who's a medical doctor, or just simply even a nurse, right? What are some of the ways you might suggest? And maybe just take a minute or two, just throw out some wisdom there or insights that we can share.
I think, like you said, everything starts from knowing yourself and knowing yourself and having an eye on the market. The market is very, very important. A lot of us went to school without looking at the market. We went to school because we wanted to have the degree. But the degree is not, if a degree cannot be applied to the market, that degree has no value. And today in the Cameroonian environment and even in the US environment, engineering is big, especially software engineering. If you just go to school for the sake of acquiring education, it's good for you. If your father has enough caution for you at home, that is very good, or he's a politician or whatever, because he's going to prepare that whole sweet environment for you. But for people like us who had to start from nothing, education is not as important. What you have to aim at is to fill your belly. That's why you see, that's the difference between Nigerians and Cameroonians. Nigerians think about their gari from morning till evening. In Cameroon, we think about our beer and how we can go there and show them with our intellectual whatever, gymnics. Who cares about intellect? You have to make sure you feed your family, you pay your rent. So at the end of the day, you need to prepare yourself for a skill that is marketable. I'm just going to take a simple example. I mean, he wanted me to take something from nowhere. There is this lady, you probably heard, she's a musician, a Cameroonian musician. She's called Museba, right? Museba was a young Cameroonian who came from Ivory Coast. She got a degree in communication and she wanted to sing, but she couldn't get in because she just didn't know how to. So Museba goes back to Douala and then teams up with this guy called, this guy from Kumba, who knows how to write songs, in Pidgin English. So they write a song that is called Boom Boom Boom, Museba was sitting in Douala there singing in French. She couldn't go anywhere. I'm just showing you the perspective of looking at the market versus just singing, right? When she was singing in French, she was just singing. She wasn't making any money out of it. But then when she decided to use that Kumba guy, got inspiration from him, wrote that song that's called Boom 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 in Pidgin English, guess what? She put herself in for a market that is bigger than Cameroon. After she released that song on internet, guess what? The song became successful in Nigeria first. Then it became successful in Ivory Coast because she spent her youth in Ivory Coast. Then it bounced back into Ghana and then finally landed back into Cameroon. And because she's half Congolese, the Congolese started claiming her. And because she spent some of her, she's half somewhere Belgian, guess what? Suddenly, from a little city, from a little girl in Aqua, she is now an international success. And guess what? Because there is no market for music in Cameroon, you barely have 2 festivals in a year, the girl is now making it happen in Lagos. As I'm speaking to you this weekend, she's having a show at the Mega Plaza in Lagos, and she's making big money. Why? Because she was able to break from the mold. She was able to understand that, hey, if I look into the market and I follow the market, I'm going to make it. And trust me, if you don't know Museba, go and Google her, look at that lady, she's going to be something in Cameroon.
So, to Austin's comment, for people that are not naturally inclined, maybe by the education, or might dismiss a corporate career, I would say maybe use your local educational resources, your local universities. Because, as you say, you have a doctor, an engineer, you still need those soft skills. And a lot of these educations are recognizing that, and they have programs to be able to help some of these professionals to be able, for one, to come get the skills. But mostly, what I've noticed in such classes is more of a networking opportunity. You learn from the experience of others more than from the books themselves. So I'll say look through your local university communities. And also, to add to one point Thomas said, it's look at the market. You don't just go to school because you want to go to school. It should mean something that ultimately translates to improvement in your life and improvement to society. And so when I say look to your local universities, all universities are not created equal. So if you can go to the one that is maybe on top of the peer, why not? You must be strategic in our thinking, because at a certain level, every dollar you put is a dollar you're taking from somewhere else. And so it must be strategic. It must bring back more than $1 to you. So look at it in those terms.
Yeah. And I wanted to add something, which is actually the key. From my experience in the corporate world, coming from Cameroon, I always mention Cameroon because in the corporate world, we are not viewed as just guys that are in the US. When you are in the corporate world globally, they judge you based on your country, whether you want it or not. When the word Cameroon appears in any whatever, they go back to the corruption issue. That's the first idea. That is the first thing that comes into mind. So if you are in management like we are, and you have to manage resources, guess what people think about you first? Are we sure that this guy is going to manage this money properly? So honesty and integrity should be the core of your value if you want to grow in the corporate world. I mean, if I'm here today in America, it's not because I was the most, I was the most impressive guy in Cameroon, but I was able to manage $1.5 million cash in Africa. I had 14 accounts in 11 different countries that I was a signatory to. If I had embezzled that money, I could have had my castle today in Babimbi, where I'm from. But guess what? I didn't get that, but I'm here. So what I'm trying to say here is that honesty, integrity play a key role in how you can progress in the corporate world. People have to be able to trust you with their money. And the last point is you have to create value. As an African, if you are into the corporate world globally, they expect you to bring value from your natural market, which means you need to have that African map covered, right? If I'm here today, it's because I took a small company that was making $1 million in Africa into a company that makes $30 million from Africa today. I moved the country from just maybe 3 destinations in Africa, 3 countries in Africa, to 35 covering 35 countries today. So that is my contribution, and that is why I'm sitting at the table. If not, I will be out. There's no sentiment here. It's all about what you can bring to the table and how you can sustain it over the years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys have shared some great insights, and it turns out we're probably the last thing standing between you guys and lunch, so we don't want to take much more time than we need to. However, we'll all be available, and our distinguished guests, panelists here, are going to be available, so we can do the questions maybe as we eat lunch or so, if that works for you guys. But thank you guys, and hopefully this was insightful. We appreciate it.